You're standing in front of your boss's office's door, or your teacher's office's door, and you're about to have a serious conversation. Now, what kind of conversation? That's completely up to you. Is it a happy, sad, or tense conversation? Are you about to defend yourself for something that you did, or are you about to ask for something that you really want? Now, I want you to close your eyes for just a second and to picture yourself walking in. How are you moving? Confidently? Hesitantly? Or are you bracing yourself for some big, important news? If you are able to see this situation right now in your head, then congratulations. You just practiced something called mental rehearsal. Mental rehearsal or visualization is the act of vividly imagining an action or a situation in your head before it happens in real life, in order for that to improve your real life performance. Let me explain. By picturing yourself entering your boss's office and planning out your steps, how you're going to stand, how you're going to knock, how you're going to move, then you've already made yourself familiar with this overall situation because you practiced it in your head. And so a conversation that might have felt intimidating would suddenly seem easier to face. Now, this 3-minute exercise that we just did together is a simplified version of a habit I've been doing since I was a kid. Something that I used to like to call Meine Geschichte in German, which means my story in English. But this story is not a normal story in the sense of opening a book and reading a fairy tale. It's a story that happens entirely in my head. And this is what it looks like. For those who are wondering what they just saw, yes, that's me pacing around myself over and over and over again, seeing a story in my head quickly unfold with the movement of my pacing. But what do I mean by that phrase, seeing a story in my head quickly unfold with the movement of my pacing? I'm talking about the visuals, the mental pictures I'm able to create when I move in this repeated motion over and over and over again. And these visuals are similar to the ones you were able to create with the example of the boss's office. Now, these visuals would build up into scenes and then would build up something that felt like a story to me. And hence, that's from where the name of the habit came from. This used to be my version of playing and having fun when I was younger, where I would place myself, insert myself in the endings of certain stories, and become a character in the epilogue. And until today, the same habit of playing still remains with me. And it's something I need to do, where I pace, and I walk, or I run, and I see those visuals in my head unfold. And without me realizing, Meine Geschichte grew from my version of playing since I was a kid to my version of visualization as a young adult today, where it's the same concept of imagining, but the stories that I create help plan out my steps towards the future, like where I want to go, who I want to be, what I want to become. And it does this by constantly revisiting these images in my head until they start to influence my real-life decisions and what I work towards. And I never thought that Meine Geschichte really mattered, up until I started writing this talk, which is when I realized that visualization has been studied for years in terms of neuroscience, in terms of medicine, in terms of professionals, individuals who take this technique to the next level and use it to improve their real-life performance. Neuroscientists find the process of mental rehearsal or visualization fascinating because when you vividly imagine an action or a situation in your head with all its details and sensations, then you place your mind in a state of realistic imagination, where your brain will treat that experience, or that imagination, as a real experience rather than just a simple daydream. In other words, your brain's motor cortex, responsible for planning and executing a movement, cannot really differentiate between you mentally seeing an action really well in your head versus you performing it. And so, when you imagine yourself running, climbing, playing the piano, then you activate the same neural pathways in your brain as if you were actually performing that action. And the repetition of this imagination is what makes this action feel close to muscle memory. And this is what Olympic athletes do before competitions. They call this technique specifically motor imagery, which is a cognitive process that enables them to mentally stimulate a movement, to see, feel, and almost live a certain action without them actually performing it. Take Michael Phelps, for example, one of the most successful Olympic athletes with 23 gold medals. He stated in one of his interviews that before every competition, he would mentally swim the entire race 2 months before the event. Stroke by stroke, second by second, he would see every detail of the competition from start to finish in his head every night before he slept. And the visualizations in his head changed every day. Sometimes he would be the swimmer himself, and he would mentally put himself through challenges like his goggles filling up with water halfway through the competition. And other times, he would be a random audience member, and he would see himself, Michael Phelps, breaking the world record for the 100-meter butterfly stroke. But no matter what, the story always ended up ending in the same way. He won. And that's why he stayed so controlled underwater. Because no matter what challenge he saw, he was so mentally prepared. He's won the race thousands of times in his head with many different challenges. So he would deal with the problem like it was muscle memory. Even in medicine, scientists have been trying to prove that a motor imagery plus a physical therapy treatment can show better results than just only a physical therapy treatment in stroke rehabilitation. And this is because individuals, patients who saw themselves healing and walking better after having had the stroke, were actually able to believe in their ability to heal. And so they showed better results. Entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs are examples of individuals who practice mental rehearsal and visualization. But they don't practice movements like Michael Phelps and like with the example of the medicine. They rehearse outcomes. Take Oprah Winfrey, for example, an individual who has been practicing this visualization long before her fame or her success. Growing up poor, she constantly imagined herself standing in front of an audience, speaking while others listened. And even when she became successful and she had her talk at the AM Chicago, that same image of her when she was a kid standing and speaking in front of an audience is what pushed her to want something even more. She wanted ownership. And that's how Harper Productions was born, a multimedia company worth around $2.8 billion. And she was able to achieve this by constantly seeing the visions in her head, the new and the old, until they started to influence her real-life decisions and her actions and what she worked towards. Finally, we all imagine differently. Some of us imagine, or for some it starts as our version of play, like how it started with Meine, Geschichte. Others of us imagine for mental rehearsal, to practice for something. Athletes call it motor imagery, and entrepreneurs call it visualization. But at its core, it's the same human ability to imagine and to practice to see what matters before it happens. Tonight, standing in front of you is not a coincidence. It's something Meine Geschichte has been rehearsing for me over and over again. So thank you, Meine Geschichte, for making this moment come true. And thank you, my dear audience, for being part of the story, for being part of Meine Geschichte. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to close your eyes and to imagine and to use your imagination to understand what you truly want. In an ideal world, who are you? Where are you standing? What are you saying? Who is listening to you? And how do you feel? Pause. Take a snapshot of this image and repeat it in your head, once, if not more, every day if you can. And you will see that truly, when you give your imagination the space and the intention, it can do incredible things. Thank you.